So I'm delighted to be participating in this conference. I was really intrigued and honored by the Eidolon Center's generous invitation to speak to you today about digital photography and cell phone photography in particular, and as we are experiencing it now in a time of escalating climate change crisis. And thank you very much, Rosa and Andra, for including me and for so generously facilitating this virtual presentation. So I am joining you today from Ottawa, Canada, on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I make this land acknowledgement as a reminder to myself as a settler guest on this land to learn from and honor and put into practice the stewardship of the biosphere that Indigenous peoples continue to practice, such that humanity can one day exist harmoniously, equitably, and sustainably. My talk today was inspired by events of nearly a year ago in spring 2024, when my part of the world, as well as a swath of the USA and Mexico, was gearing up with much fanfare and excitement for a total solar eclipse. And here is a slide with a map of the eclipse path as it passed over North America. Like my fellow citizens living in the eclipse path, I was embroiled in the anticipatory fervor as the big day approached. Indeed, the small and not too far away from me city of Niagara Falls, in the path of totality, even declared a state of emergency in expectation of the million-plus eclipse-chasers set to descend on the area that was said to be an optimal viewing site. And here is an image from that location with the beautiful falls in the background. As well as being an eclipse watcher, I'm also a novelist, a scholar of cinema studies, and in both aspects of these aspects of my writing and research, I consider how the stories we tell and the way they are told, using words or images or combination thereof, reveal something about our material and ecological relationship with the earth and the raw resources we extract from our planet. So within this framework, I took a case study approach to the solar eclipse and asked what kind of story was emerging from the excitement of not just seeing the eclipse in its totality, but perhaps more interestingly, in capturing a photographic image of this rare and fleeting event. Indeed, there was as much information circulating about how to snap a picture of the eclipse in a way that would not damage your eyes or fry your smartphone as there was about the science of the eclipse itself. Indeed, photojournalist David Chidley noted in an interview with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation that, quote, cameras pointed directly at the sun will be taking in an incredible amount of light and or heat, and that he wouldn't risk his $1,000 cell phone for the sake of an eclipse photograph, so recommended using a solar filter to protect smartphone cameras, such as we see in this image here of someone using the lens from a pair of eclipse glasses to filter out the light. So what was interesting about the solar eclipse was not just observing what was visible in the sky when the moon obscured the sun, but how this celestial event was mediated through camera technology and how we citizens, scientists, citizens, and citizen photographers alike documented the solar eclipse as an event, turning it into data on the one hand, an information set to be studied and analyzed, and a story on the other, a narrative about who we are as a species, our relationship to the earth, the sun, the entire solar system, and to solar power. And during a time when, on the one hand, the impacts of climate crisis are becoming increasingly catastrophic. And on the other, when humanity is moving into what environmental journalist Vince Beiser calls the electro-digital age. Many of us pay attention to our biophysical environment in times of crisis. We notice water when there is not enough or when there's too much. We notice the ponds and lakes and rivers we once skated on when they no longer freeze over. And fire season doesn't just start earlier and earlier, but never really ends. And because the Earth's atmosphere is trapping dangerously high levels of anthropogenic CO2 emissions, the sun's heat and energy feel increasingly ominous. So it is that as the Earth's atmosphere heats up, we notice the sun more. We also notice the sun as we install solar panels onto roofs and as government and business promise to invest in renewables like solar power. We notice the sun as scientists explore forms of geoengineering to make the Earth more reflective, bouncing sunlight away from our planet in an effort to cool it down. But as we viewed the solar eclipse last April, we also noticed the sun when there is no sun, when it was overshadowed by the moon, bringing those people inside the path of the eclipse together to collectively experience this rare event. And we notice the sun, though perhaps more indirectly, when we look at photographic and cinematic images. The images that we encounter with ubiquity, selfies with family, advertisements, intimately connect us to the sun that warms the Earth. While we photograph and video the world and ourselves using smartphone cameras with total abandon, many of us are unaware of how images are made, how cameras work, never mind where they come from as consumer products, nor the geopolitical tensions that arise as nations compete for the resources needed to produce tech commodities and infrastructure. Nor are many of us aware of the deleterious cost that mining for the minerals and other components needed to build a smartphone and a camera pose to human life and the biosphere. Nor are many of us aware of where these devices go once they are no longer useful or current. Indeed, what is the real price of the smartphones we use to snap selfies? And who is paying these costs? And what do the images generated by the 17 billion smartphones, as Beiser notes, in use globally say about us, citizens alive at this moment in history when petroculture is converging with the electro-digital age? Indeed, the geopolitics of mineral extraction and the race to control the metals that will power the batteries of our cars and phones and other tech we are so enmeshed with is now being felt rather acutely in my country, Canada, as the current US administration continues to make provocative statements about turning Canada into its 51st state, in large part to control the mineral and metal deposits that Canada has and that big tech needs so badly to continue its expansion and extend its reach into all facets of planetary and interplanetary life. Back to the sun. At its very heart and core, photographic technology has, ever since its invention, depended on the sun's rays to give it materiality, embodied in the form of images, and power, embodied in the manufacturing of those images in the first place. As we know, a photographic camera harvests sunlight, literally trapping it on light-sensitive surfaces, or, as in the case with digital image making, an image sensor converts the intensity of external light into information or data and stores it on some sort of memory card or disk. William Henry Fox Talbot called some collections of his calotype images, sun pictures. And here's one such sun picture, a description that suggests so accurately an awareness of light and the process by which it is gathered, and how it is that sunlight is the foundation of photography. And later, as early photographic methods gave way to cinematic ones, the foundation of cinema as well. Indeed, we trap light on carrier surfaces in order to freeze and contain a representation or image of something that is otherwise ephemeral and fleeting. Back to the solar eclipse. In a self-reflexive turn that was as poetic as it was scientific, all of those cameras that were snapping pictures of the eclipse were trapping sunlight in order to reveal and contemplate the source of sunlight itself, our Earth star and source of life on our planet. Of course, photographs are not always made using natural light, but whether artificial light sources run on electric or battery power, somewhere along the supply chain of connecting photographic equipment with the consumer, resource energy is expended, with fossil fuel energy still being dominant. And what are fossil fuels, if not, as energy researcher Vaclav Smil reminds us, but ancient sunshine, the remains of former animals and plant matter that were, of course, fed by the process of photosynthesis, turning sunlight into the food energy necessary to sustain biological life. In some of my earlier publications on the relationship between the fossil fuel economy and cinema, I refer to this entanglement between petroculture and cinema as the fossil image. Indeed, as political scientist Kara Nu Daggett describes it, quote, life on Earth relies almost entirely upon the nuclear reactions of the sun, including forces of wind and water, as well as so-called fossil fuels, which are one part of the solar energy system that is the Earth's biosphere, end quote. Situating photography within this solar energy system brings to mind the NASA-sponsored 2024 Eclipse mega movie project, which I will pick up on a bit later, but also physicists Louis Fizeau and Léon Foucault's daguerreotype of the sun, taken in the first of its kind, taken in 1845, testifying as it does to photography's inherent entanglement with the sun's energy. Fizeau and Foucault's stark image was taken to measure the speed of light, and it showcases not only the power of the sun, but also the power of photography to contain the sun in the form of an image. Not only is sunlight the mainstay of photography, but photography has historically been intertwined with minerals and elements, and therefore with extractive processes. From the silver-coated copper plates of the daguerreotype to the salted paper techniques of William Henry Fox Talbot and the silver nitrate compound still used in black and white film stocks, the materials conventionally used in the photographic process come from elemental components of the earth. And here is an image of the mining photography exhibition catalog that Rosa mentioned, edited by Boaz Levine and Esther Rualps, which takes a deep dive into exploring how photography has always historically been tied to resource extraction, but also to exploitative colonial practices, facts that have not gone away, but are perpetuated in digital smartphone photography because phones are so enmeshed with big tech and its deleterious practices in the realm of ecology, labor, and surveillance capital. And a valuable resource on surveillance capital is a book called Reset, Reclaiming the Internet for Civil Society by Ron Diebert, and in particular, the chapter called Burning Data. As the NASA-sponsored 2024 Eclipse mega movie website explains, citizen scientists with a DSLR camera and tripod were able to volunteer to shoot and submit photographs of the solar corona to potentially be included in the mega movie, a follow-up to the 2017 effort that was a crowdsourced collection of 50,000 eclipse images that were collated into a movie. The 2024 project was again funded by NASA with the intention of producing a document that can be studied for the habits and patterns of the sun's solar jets and plumes. While the website describes project participants as citizen scientists, those sharing their images were also citizen photographers, a term that could apply to anyone with a smartphone in their pocket and likely with a few thousand photographs stored on their device itself or on so-called cloud. Indeed, those in the path of the eclipse with a cell phone camera only could upload their photos to the Sun Sketcher app. The Web's app explained that mass participation will generate an incredible database of images. When analyzed together, could allow scientists to map the sun. This massive volume of images of the total eclipse speaks to the sheer volume of cameras in our lives, the number of images that exist out there in a seemingly ethereal cloud space. In fact, it's estimated that about 1.8 trillion photographs were taken in 2024, the vast majority of these using smartphone cameras. Of course, this number will only increase as smartphones and their embodied cameras become increasingly powerful, ubiquitous, and enmeshed with every aspect of our lives. As Vince Beiser points out in his recent book, Power Metal, The Race for the Resources That Will Shape the Future, quote, as of January 2024, nearly 2/3 of the global population owned mobile phones, with more than 15 billion mobile devices in use worldwide, end quote. Extrapolated out from that figure, we arrive at the nearly unquantifiable number of digital images stockpiled on servers and devices. Beiser uses the term embodied energy, borrowed from economists, to describe and possibly quantify the amount of energy it takes to produce, grow, mine, assemble, transport, package, deliver, etc., any and all products we use each day. For example, a car has a certain amount of embodied energy, a pair of running shoes, a pineapple. And though Beiser does not include images or other forms of visual culture in his discussion, a selfie snapped with friends contains embodied energy, and this virtual presentation today contains embodied energy. But how do we represent this energy embodied in a photograph, especially when the rhetoric that accompanies digital image making technology is imbued with a sense of the ephemeral, the immaterial, and weightlessness? We can't touch digital data in the same way we can hold a paper-based photograph print in our hands. So how do we pull the image apart so as to make these relations concrete and thinkable? I can think this relation through when I think about eclipse photography, when I can see the self-fulfilling loop of a camera taking a picture of its very source and means of existence, sunlight. I can see it when I read about artisanal cobalt mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the book Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives by Siddharth Kara. And why do we even need to do this? Surely the energy embodied in a digital selfie is negligible compared to that of a pickup truck or a watermelon imported from Guatemala in January. I think it is necessary because these images are, our images are so close to us. They are an extension of our identity. They are our memories. That embodied energy is therefore part of my sense of self, and it connects me to other points along the supply chain for good and for ill, and it connects me to the earth. This embodied energy might also be called a footprint, one that is located in the energy-intensive data servers that facilitate the clouds where our trillions of pictures are stored. In the mining of minerals, many of them conflict minerals that make up the interior of cell phones and their cameras, and that enable a multitude of digital and green technologies. And this embodiment or footprint is wedged into the glut of e-waste that results from the capitalist principle of instant obsolescence. Indeed, there is so much to read into the LA fires, the heartbreaking and disturbing way that the city most associated with the production of moving image pictures is now playing itself. And I say playing itself in reference to the Tom Anderson film, Los Angeles Plays Itself, from about 2003, I think, in its own disaster film, one caught on smartphone cameras as photographing environmental catastrophe becomes part of the new normal. Maybe this is why the total eclipse of 2024 in North America was greeted with such enthusiasm. It was reassuring to us that the system still works, that natural phenomena can be predictable, beautiful, casting a cool shadow over a slice of planet Earth, causing collective gasps, some tears, numerous kids' voices asking where the sun had gone for that brief moment. The key still fit the lock. The world turned as it should. We all tossed our disposable eclipse glasses into the bin and life went on. However, a few months later, the iconic Canadian town of Jasper, Alberta, went up in flames. And not long after that, Los Angeles erupted in fire. Both iconic locations defined by tourism and how they feature as identifiable backdrops for tourist snapshots. And for Los Angeles, set the stage for innumerable alternate or possible worlds. Back to the Eclipse mega movie for a moment. Those who wanted to participate in the project could also do so at the level of volunteering to use coding and machine learning to analyze and assemble volumes of discrete images of the eclipse into a seamless cinematic whole. It seems that current innovations in AI that are gaining ascendancy will lead to what the mega movie site describes as a scientifically and aesthetically improved version from the 2017 mega movie. And that AI's integration into image making poses yet another form of energy embodied in our image culture. As we're also learning about AI, thanks to researchers like Joyita Gupta and journalists like Elizabeth Colbert, this accelerating technology is intensively energy hungry. While the hardware components of AI are on their own energy intensive, the data centers that execute the computing consume voluminous electricity and also fresh water needed to keep the servers cool. I will sum up. A photograph, digital or analog, is inherently entwined with the sun and the earth, and we should treat photographs with respect, for in the aggregate, they have an impact. The choices we make around our images, how they are produced, shared, and stored, is indicative of our collective relationship to each other and to the globe. Our pictures say something about who we are, about what and how much we consume and expend. Our pictures can bring light to, expose, reveal, enable us to contemplate what we might otherwise pass over. Indeed, what really stands out as a positive aspect of the eclipse mega movie is that it is derived from mass action and mass participation. As I watched the eclipse with my neighbors and fellow citizens in my corner of the world, unified by this collectively experienced event, I was cheered by the sense of continuity, connection to each other, to our community, and to the solar system, of which we are only a small part. And finally, in terms of the impact of the energy intensive smartphone, and by extension, the embodied energy within the images it produces, the advice from Ron Debert, the author of Reset, and also who heads the Citizen Lab, and also the advice of geologists interviewed by the Smithsonian or geologists interviewed who are involved with this exhibit at the Smithsonian Museum called Cell Phone Unseen Connections, which explores the links between mining practices, cell phone technology, and eco and social justice. Retaining our phones for as long as possible will significantly reduce their footprint, and by extension, the footprint of our images. And I am making that extension. So if the expression data is the new oil captures the shift from petroculture to the electro-digital age, we can begin to think through how there is a vast material footprint or embodiment contained in the way in which we produce, exchange our data and our everyday images. Thank you.